The Grand Symphony Hall of the galactic Concord was a marvel of engineering and artistry, a sprawling dome of crystalline glass that refracted starlight into a kaleidoscope of colors. Inside, the air hummed with the melodies of 1,000 species, ethereal harmonies from the Sylvans, rhythmic drumming from the Drellans, and the haunting poetry of the Leorans. It was the festival of unity, a celebration of peace and creativity, where conflict was resolved not through violence, but through the power of art. Humans were there, of course, though they stood apart. Their history of war and bloodshed made them an oddity among the Concord's members. While other species shared symphonies and sonnets, humanity's exhibit was a quiet corner filled with relics of their past. A rusted sword, a tattered flag, and recordings of ancient battle hymns. Few visited. To the Concord, humanity's violent history was a relic of a barbaric age, something to be studied but not celebrated. "Not everything beautiful is peaceful," murmured Ambassador Sarah Carter as she watched a Sylvan flautist perform. Her words were lost in the music, but they carried a weight she couldn't shake. The invasion began without warning. The warlike Vrax Empire, a civilization that thrived on conquest, descended upon Concord space like a storm. Their warships, sleek and black as obsidian, tore through planetary defenses with terrifying efficiency. The Concord had no military, no weapons, no concept of war. Their pleas for peace were met with plasma fire and the cold laughter of the Vrax commanders. Planets fell one by one. The Sylvan homeworld was reduced to ash, their flutes silenced forever. The Drellans, proud and strong, were enslaved, their drums replaced by the clanking of chains. The Concord's leaders, gathered in the Symphony Hall, could only watch in horror as their utopia crumbled. "We cannot fight them," said Elder Miriam Holt, her voice trembling. "We do not know how." Sarah Carter stepped forward, her jaw set. "We do." The Concord's leaders were hesitant. Turning to humanity felt like admitting failure, like embracing the very violence they had sworn to reject. But as the Vrax advanced, they had no choice. Earth's response was swift. Ships carrying soldiers, engineers, and strategists arrived within days. The Concord watched in awe as humanity mobilized with a precision born of centuries of conflict. But there was a deeper problem. The Concord species had no instinct for war. They recoiled at the sight of weapons, hesitated at the thought of taking a life. "You don't understand," said Daniel, a young Leoran poet. "We cannot simply become killers. It goes against everything we are." Sarah nodded. "You're right. You don't have to become killers. You have to become protectors." The training began, but progress was slow. The Concord's soldiers faltered in simulations, their hearts heavy with guilt. Then, one night, a human soldier named Marcus began to sing. It was an old song, a battle hymn from Earth's ancient wars. His voice was rough but filled with emotion, the lyrics speaking of sacrifice, courage, and the hope of dawn after a long night. The Concord soldiers listened, their fear and doubt momentarily forgotten. "What is that?" Daniel asked. "A war song," Marcus replied. "It's something we've always had. Music to remind us why we fight, to keep us together when everything falls apart." Inspired, Daniel picked up his lyre and began to play, weaving the human melody with Leoran harmonies. Other soldiers joined in, adding their own voices and instruments. The result was something entirely new. A song that was both a lament and a rallying cry. The first battle came too soon. The Vrax fleet descended on a Concord outpost, their ships blotting out the stars. The Concord forces, led by humanity, stood ready. As the Vrax advanced, the soldiers began to sing. The war song echoed across the battlefield, a strange and terrible beauty rising above the chaos. The fighting was brutal. Plasma bolts lit up the void, and the screams of the dying filled the comms. The Concord soldiers, though inexperienced, fought with a courage born of desperation. Daniel, his lyre strapped to his back, fired his rifle with trembling hands, the war song still on his lips. "Hold the line," Marcus shouted, his voice cutting through the din. "For the Sylvans, for the Drellans, for the Concord." The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide began to turn. The Vrax, unprepared for the Concord's newfound resolve, faltered. When the last enemy ship retreated, the battlefield fell silent. The victory was bittersweet. The outpost was in ruins, and many had been lost. But for the first time, the Concord had stood their ground. As the soldiers tended to the wounded and mourned the dead, Daniel found Marcus. "We did it," Daniel said, his voice hoarse. Marcus nodded, his face grim. "This is just the beginning. The Vrax won't stop, and neither can we." The war songs spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, species adapted their own artistic traditions into music and chants that inspired courage and unity. The Concord, once helpless, began to fight back with a strength born of desperation and hope. The final battle took place above the Lioran homeworld. The Vrax fleet, massive and unyielding, faced the combined forces of the Concord and humanity. As the two sides clashed, the war songs filled the void, a symphony of defiance and determination. Daniel, now a commander, led his troops into the heart of the battle. His lyre was gone, replaced by a rifle and a resolve forged in fire. Marcus fought beside him, their voices rising together in song even as the world burned around them. When the Vrax flagship was destroyed, the tide turned. The enemy, broken and leaderless, retreated. The Concord had won. The aftermath was somber. The Lioran homeworld was scarred, its once pristine cities reduced to rubble. The Concord's leaders gathered in the ruins of the Symphony Hall, their faces etched with grief and relief. Sarah Carter stood before them, her voice steady. "You have proven that even in the darkest times, there is light. You have shown that art and courage can exist even in war." Daniel stepped forward, holding his lyre. "We will rebuild," he said, "but we will not forget. The war songs will remind us of what we lost and what we fought for." Years later, the galactic Concord flourished once more. The scars of war remained, but so did the songs. Humanity, once seen as barbaric, was now honored as a protector. Their duality, their capacity for both creation and destruction, seen not as a flaw but as a strength. In the rebuilt Symphony Hall, a new festival was held. This time humanity's exhibit was not a quiet corner, but a centerpiece. Among the relics of war was a recording of the first war song, its haunting melody a reminder of the strange and terrible beauty of the stars. As the music played, Daniel stood beside Marcus, now an old man. "We could not have done it without you," Daniel said. Marcus smiled. "You did it yourselves. We just reminded you that even in war there is art, and in art there is hope." And as the stars shone above, the galaxy sang together, united by the songs of war and peace.